The man standing before me was trembling, not from fear, from the effort of standing at all. Robert Chen, 68 years old, leaned heavily on a worn wooden cane, his left leg rigid in a brace that ran from ankle to thigh. His jacket, clean but frayed at the cuffs, bore a small pin on the lapel. Purple Heart, Vietnam, 1971. The citation in front of me was for an expired vehicle registration, $85. The file showed he'd missed 2 previous court dates. Standard procedure would be to add failure to appear charges, increase the fine, possibly suspend his license. But something in the way he stood there, shoulders back despite obvious pain, made me pause. "Mr. Chen," I began, my voice gentle, "you missed 2 prior court dates. Can you tell me why?" He opened his mouth, closed it. His hand gripped the cane tighter, knuckles going white. Then his eyes filled with tears, and this 6-8-year-old decorated combat veteran began to cry in my courtroom. Not quiet tears, deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere so broken that everyone in the gallery went absolutely silent. What happened in the next 17 minutes didn't just change Robert Chen's life. It changed how I understood what justice really means when you're dealing with people who've given everything to this country and received almost nothing in return. Before I tell you what I did, I need you to understand something. If you believe our veterans deserve better than bureaucratic indifference, if you think the justice system should see the human being before it sees the fine, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what you're about to witness is why I've spent 38 years on this bench and why some cases stay with you long after the gavel falls. The case had come to my attention 3 days earlier. Miss Reyes, my clerk, had flagged it with a yellow sticky note. "Judge, this one might need extra time." I'd pulled the file. Robert Chen, citation issued 6 months ago for driving with an expired registration. The registration had lapsed by 4 months when Officer Morrison pulled him over on a Tuesday afternoon on Branch Avenue. Standard traffic stop, but the notes from Officer Morrison caught my attention. Subject polite, cooperative, explained financial hardship, apologized repeatedly, requested payment plan. Appeared distressed. The first court date was set for 8 weeks later. Robert didn't appear. A second notice went out. He didn't appear for that one either. Now here we were, third notice, with additional contempt charges pending for failure to appear. The fine had grown from $85 to $285 with court costs and penalties. For some people in my courtroom, $285 is a minor inconvenience. For Robert Chen, it might as well have been $28,000. When Miss Reyes called his name that morning, I watched him struggle to stand from the gallery bench. It took him nearly 30 seconds, using the bench in front of him for leverage, his cane planted firmly, his braced leg dragging slightly as he made his way to the defendant's table. No attorney. He was representing himself. He wore dress slacks that had been pressed carefully, probably that morning. His shirt was buttoned to the collar. His shoes were old but polished. This was a man who understood respect, who knew what it meant to appear before authority with dignity. He just didn't have the resources to fix his problem. "Mr. Chen," I said, and my voice was softer than usual. "Before we discuss the citation, I need to understand why you missed the previous court dates. This is your opportunity to explain." He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I've seen 1,000 times before but never get used to. Shame. Deep, crushing shame that comes from wanting to do the right thing and being physically, financially, emotionally unable to do it. "Your Honor," he began, his voice rough. I tried to come the first date I had it written down. I was going to take the bus because my car." He stopped, swallowing hard. "My car's registration expired because I couldn't afford to renew it, and I couldn't afford the safety inspection it needed to renew it. The mechanic said it would be $340 for the repairs. I don't have that. I get $1,247 a month from VA disability. My rent is $875. My medications are $190, even with VA coverage. That leaves me $182 for everything else: food, utilities, phone, bus fare." The courtroom was absolutely quiet. People in the gallery were leaning forward, listening. "The first court date," he continued, "I took the bus, but I got the schedule wrong. By the time I got here, the morning session was over. I asked if I could wait for the afternoon, but they said I'd already been marked as failure to appear. I tried to explain, but—" He trailed off. "The second date, I woke up that morning and my leg, this leg," He gestured to the braced limb. The shrapnel shifts sometimes, presses on the nerve. The pain was so bad I couldn't stand. I couldn't walk. I live alone. I had no way to call the court, no way to get here. I failed. I failed, and I'm sorry. His voice broke on the word sorry, and that's when the tears came. This combat veteran, this man who'd taken shrapnel defending his country, who'd probably seen friends die, who'd survived things I couldn't imagine, stood in my courtroom and wept because he couldn't pay $85. I removed my glasses slowly, cleaned them. It's what I do when I need a moment to control my own emotions. Because in 38 years, I've learned that justice isn't just about laws and fines. It's about seeing the whole person, understanding their circumstances, recognizing when the system is about to crush someone who's already been crushed enough. "Mr. Chen," I said quietly, "tell me about your service." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to compose himself. "I served in the Army, Your Honor." 1,969 to 1,972. 2 tours in Vietnam. I was a combat engineer. We cleared roads, built bridges, swept for mines. He paused. May 15th, 1971. My unit was clearing a supply route near Pleiku. I was checking a culvert when a makeshift explosive device detonated. Shrapnel tore through my left leg. I also caught some in my back and shoulder. They medevaced me to Saigon, then to Japan, then to Walter Reed. I was in hospitals for 8 months. They wanted to amputate the leg. I begged them not to. I did 2 years of physical therapy. I kept the leg, but he gestured to the brace. It doesn't work right, never has. The shrapnel's still in there. They couldn't get all of it out. On bad days, I can barely walk. On good days, I manage. "And after your service?" I asked. "I came home to Providence, worked at the post office for 23 years, sorting mail, delivery routes when my leg allowed it. I retired in 2008 on medical disability. The VA rated me at 70% disabled. That's where the $1,247 comes from." He looked down. "It used to be enough. But rent keeps going up, medications keep going up, everything keeps going up except the check." I looked at the file again. Vehicle 1998 Honda Civic. The car was 27 years old. "Mr. Chen, this car. Is it your only transportation?" "Yes, Your Honor. I need it for VA appointments at the medical center. The bus route doesn't go directly there. The walk from the nearest bus stop is about 6 blocks. I can't walk 6 blocks. Not anymore." I turned to Officer Morrison, who was in the courtroom that morning for another case. "Officer Morrison, you wrote the citation. Do you remember this stop?" Officer Morrison stood. He was a young officer, maybe early 30s, and I could see he was uncomfortable. "Yes, Your Honor, I remember Mr. Chen clearly. He was pulled over for a broken taillight. When I ran his registration, it showed expired. He was very apologetic. He explained he was trying to get to a VA appointment. He showed me his disability card, his Purple Heart license plate application that hadn't been processed yet. Morrison paused. "Your Honor, I didn't want to write the citation. But the registration was 4 months expired. Policy requires it. I told him if he could get the registration renewed within 30 days and show proof at court, the prosecutor usually recommends dismissal." "And did you get it renewed, Mr. Chen?" I asked. The veteran shook his head, fresh tears streaming. "I tried, Your Honor. I went to the DMV. They said I needed a current safety inspection. I took the car to 3 different mechanics getting quotes. The cheapest was $340. The brake pads are worn, there's an exhaust leak, 2 tires are below the legal tread depth. I've been saving $20 a month when I can. In 8 months, I've saved $115. I'm trying so hard, but I can't keep up." His voice rose, not in anger but in desperation. "I served my country. I took shrapnel for this country. And now I can't afford to fix a car so I can get to the doctor who treats the wounds I got serving this country. I can't afford the fine for the registration. I can't afford to renew for the car I need to get to the VA. It's a circle I can't break, and I don't know what to do anymore." He was fully crying now, his shoulders shaking. "I'm not a criminal. I'm not trying to cheat anyone. I just don't have the money. I don't have it. And I'm so tired of failing, of being behind, of apologizing for being poor when I did everything right. I served. I worked. I paid my taxes. And this is where I ended up." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Robert Chen crying. I looked at the gallery. A woman in the 3rd row was wiping her eyes. A young man in a veteran's cap had his jaw clenched tight. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, her hands frozen above the keys. This is the moment that defines what justice means. Not the law as written, but the law as it should be applied when you're looking at a human being who's been broken by circumstances beyond his control. If you believe this is what our justice system should prioritize, share this video. Comment below if you've ever felt trapped by fees and fines you couldn't afford. Because what I'm about to do next, I did for every veteran who's ever been forgotten, every disabled person who's been punished for being poor, every human being who's ever stood before authority and begged to be seen as more than a case number. I stood up from the bench. When I stand during a hearing, everyone knows something significant is happening. I came down from the bench and walked to where Robert Chen stood trembling. "Mr. Chen," I said quietly, "look at me." He raised his eyes, red and swollen. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear every word. You are not a failure. You have not failed. The system has failed you." I turned to address the entire courtroom. "This man served our country. He took shrapnel in combat. He worked for 23 years after his service despite chronic pain and disability. He's living on $1,247 a month, and after rent and medications, he has $182 to survive on. And we, the system, cited him for having an expired registration on a 27-year-old car because he can't afford $340 in repairs." I looked at Miss Reyes. "Pull up Mr. Chen's full record," she typed quickly. "Your Honor, no prior citations, no criminal record, clean driving record before this incident. VA disability status confirmed, Purple Heart recipient confirmed." I turned back to Robert. "Mr. Chen, here's what's going to happen. First, all charges against you are dismissed. The citation for expired registration, dismissed. The failure to appear charges, dismissed. You owe this court nothing. Not $285, not $85, not 1 penny. Robert's eyes went wide, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Second," I continued, "I'm going to make some calls. Officer Morrison, you mentioned a Purple Heart license plate application that hadn't been processed?" Morrison nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Chen applied for Purple Heart veteran plates 8 months ago. They're still pending. Miss Reyes, contact the DMV. I want those plates processed today. Priority handling. Purple Heart recipients should never wait 8 months for recognition." I looked back at Robert. "Purple Heart plates come with benefits, Mr. Chen. Free registration renewal, reduced fees. It's not much, but it's something this state owes you." "Your Honor," Robert whispered, "I don't understand." "You don't need to understand yet. Just listen. Third, I'm going to contact the VA directly. You shouldn't be paying $190 a month for medications related to service-connected disabilities. That's excessive. We're going to review your coverage." I turned to Officer Morrison. "Officer, you clearly didn't want to write this citation. You showed compassion at the scene. I'm going to ask you to do something more. Take Mr. Chen's car information, get quotes from 3 mechanics on the repairs needed. The court has a fund for emergency assistance. It's not large, but it's for situations exactly like this." Morrison stepped forward immediately. "Your Honor, I'd like to pay for the repairs myself. Mr. Chen shouldn't have to wait for the court fund. I'll handle it today." The courtroom stirred. I saw people nodding, a few wiping their eyes. "Officer Morrison, that's generous, but I think we can do better." "Bailiff, how many veterans are in the courtroom today?" Officer D'Angelo scanned the room. "I count 7 wearing service caps or pins, Your Honor. Approach the bench, please." 7 men and women stood and came forward, ages ranging from early 50s to mid-80s. Vietnam, Gulf War, Afghanistan pins on their jackets and caps. I looked at them. "You heard Mr. Chen's situation. One of your brothers needs help. What do you say?" An elderly man, probably mid-80s, spoke first. "Judge, I'm Harold Vasquez, Marine Corps, Korea. I'll put in $50 toward his repairs." A woman, maybe 60, stepped up. "Angela Reed, Army nurse, Gulf War. I'll put in $50. One by one, they pledged. $50, $40, $30, whatever they could afford. Within 5 minutes, they'd raised $340. Exactly the amount needed for repairs. I turned to the gallery. "Anyone else want to contribute to help a veteran?" Hands went up across the room. People came forward with $20 bills, $10 bills, even change. A young mother with 2 children gave $5. "It's all I have today, but he served for us. Within 15 minutes, $680 had been collected, enough for the repairs, new tires, and several months of registration fees. Robert Chen stood there, tears streaming, watching strangers fund his survival. "Your Honor," he managed to say, "I can't. This is too much. I don't deserve." "Stop," I said firmly but kindly. "You deserve every bit of this and more. You took shrapnel for people you never met. These people are simply returning the favor." I turned to the prosecutor, who'd been watching silently. "Miss Chen, do you have any objection to this resolution?" Jennifer Chen stood, and I could see emotion in her face too. "No objection, Your Honor. The state fully supports dismissal of all charges. And," she paused, "I'd like to add $50 to the collection. My grandfather was a Vietnam veteran. He would have wanted me to." The courtroom erupted in applause. Not the polite courtroom applause I sometimes hear, but real, sustained clapping. People were standing. Robert Chen was sobbing openly now, but they were different tears. Not shame, not desperation, relief, gratitude. The overwhelming emotion of being seen, being valued, being helped. I let the moment settle, then raised my hand for quiet. "Mr. Chen, Officer Morrison will coordinate getting your car repaired. The DMV will process your Purple Heart plates today. I'm going to personally follow up on your VA medication coverage. And I'm going to do one more thing." I looked at Miss Reyes. "Contact the Providence Veterans Service Office. I want Mr. Chen enrolled in every benefit program he qualifies for. Housing assistance, food assistance, utility support, transportation services, everything. He's been surviving on $182 a month after rent and medications. That's unacceptable for a Purple Heart recipient in this city." Robert finally found his voice. "Your Honor, why? Why are you doing all this?" I stepped closer to him. "Because 54 years ago, you were a young man who answered when your country called. You went to a jungle halfway around the world. You took shrapnel that's still in your body, causing pain every single day. You came home to a country that didn't always appreciate your sacrifice. You worked for 23 years despite disability. You never asked for special treatment. You just tried to keep your head above water." I paused. "And this morning, you stood in my courtroom ashamed because you couldn't pay $85. That shame doesn't belong to you, Mr. Chen. It belongs to us, to a system that lets veterans fall through cracks, that punishes poverty, that sees a bureaucratic violation before it sees a human being. Today, we fix that. At least for you, at least right now, we fix that." The courtroom was silent again, but it was a different silence, not shock, but reverence. Robert straightened as much as his damaged leg would allow. He raised his hand and saluted me. "I'm not military. I've never served in uniform. But I returned that salute, because in that moment, it wasn't about military protocol. It was about respect between two men who understood that justice means nothing if it doesn't have compassion. "Thank you, Your Honor," Robert said, his voice steady now. "You've given me more than car repairs. You've given me hope. Mr. Chen, you never lost hope. You just lost support. We're giving that back." I returned to the bench. "This case is concluded. All charges dismissed. Court will take a 15-minute recess while we coordinate Mr. Chen's assistance." The gavel fell, but before anyone could move, Harold Vasquez, the 85-year-old Korean War Marine, began singing. Softly at first, then stronger. "God Bless America." One by one, the other veterans joined in. Then the whole courtroom. Standing, singing, honoring the man who'd served and suffered and survived. I stood at my bench watching Robert Chen, surrounded by strangers who'd become brothers and sisters in the span of 20 minutes, singing to him, for him, with him. This is what justice looks like when you remember that laws serve people, not the other way around. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. "Dear Judge Caprio, my car has been repaired. It runs better than it has in 5 years. My Purple Heart plates arrived, and with them, I learned I'm exempt from many fees I'd been paying for years. The Veterans Service Office enrolled me in 6 programs I didn't know existed. My rent is now subsidized. I receive food assistance. My medication costs have dropped to $35 a month. Your Honor, I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living." Last week, I drove to the VA without worrying about being pulled over. I attended a veteran support group I'd been too ashamed to join because I felt like such a failure. I met 3 other veterans in similar situations. We're helping each other now. But more than the practical help, you gave me something I'd lost. You gave me dignity. For years I felt invisible. Another poor veteran, another statistic, another person falling behind. In your courtroom, you saw me. You made everyone see me. Not as a case number or a citation, but as a man who served, who struggled, who mattered. Thank you for reminding me that I still matter. Respectfully, Robert Chen, U.S. Army, RT, Purple Heart recipient. I kept that letter. I keep it in my desk drawer next to Brandon Whitmore's letter, next to dozens of others from people whose lives intersected with my courtroom in moments that changed them. Because these letters remind me why I do this job. Not to enforce fines, but to see people. Not to punish violations, but to understand circumstances. Not to apply the law blindly, but to apply it with wisdom, compassion, and recognition that behind every case file is a human being with a story, with struggles, with dignity that deserves to be honored. 6 months after Robert's hearing, the Providence City Council passed a resolution creating the Veterans Traffic Citation Review Program. Any veteran cited for vehicle-related violations due to financial hardship can request review. The program connects them with veteran services before fines accumulate, before court dates are missed, before shame replaces pride. The program is named the Robert Chen Veterans Dignity Initiative. They asked Robert to speak at the inauguration ceremony. He stood before the city council, no longer trembling, and said, "No veteran should ever stand in a courtroom crying because they can't afford $85. The uniform we wore should mean something. The sacrifices we made should count for something. This program ensures they do." Officer Morrison, the young cop who wrote the original citation, now coordinates the program with the Veterans Service Office. He told me, "Judge, that day in your courtroom changed how I do my job. I still enforce the law, but now I always ask about circumstances. I look for the story behind the violation. Sometimes the most important thing I can do isn't write a citation, it's connect someone to help. That's the ripple effect of compassion in a courtroom. One case, one person, one moment of choosing to see humanity before bureaucracy, and the change extends outward in ways you can't predict but can always hope for. If this story moved you, if you believe our veterans deserve better, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that justice and compassion aren't opposites, they're partners. And remember, behind every fine, every citation, every case number is a human being. Some of them fought for our freedom. The least we can do is fight for their dignity. That's not just good law. That's what it means to serve justice with a heart that still remembers what service truly means. Court adjourned.